Amen.
Amen. Thank you all. Bow our heads, dear Heavenly Father. We come to you in prayer in the name of Jesus, giving all thanks, honor, and glory to your Son's holy name. We ask that you give us a do-right mind, give us a open heart, give us ears to hear what thus saith the Lord. You may be seated.
Amen.
The title of my message this morning or this afternoon, and I will be brief. It is called, You're Not Special. Many of us don't understand what transformation means. Part of what I'm going to be talking about is our children. The pastor mentioned that in her prayer earlier. Talked about second chances. Some of us endeavor for second chances in our life, but there are those around us, including Christians or so-called Christians, that don't allow for you to have your second chance, even though God has given you one.
Amen, amen.
I heard a man speak the other day, and his name is Chester. Chester is a former racist. He hated black people in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
But when Chester spoke, I recognized the transformation in his words. I was personally attacked for associating with him. God messaged me personally, used some vulgar language. Grayson, what the F do you think you're doing? This guy is a racist, blah, 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 blah. And I said, by whose measure? Yours? And of course, I ended up having to block the person. Now, when I met Chester, Chester said to me, well, you know, I've had some people to say thus and so about me, mentioning his past. And I asked him quite directly, I said, well, what was your past? He said, well, I belong to some racist organizations. But God changed my heart. I gave my life to him, and that's who I serve. And I had to make known to him, but Chester, who am I to judge you on the words of others? Now, I didn't say nothing about I don't judge. Please don't confuse my words.
Mm-hmm.
I said, who am I to judge you on the words of others?
That's right.
I shall let your fruit determine my judgment against you, because Christ said you will know them by their fruit. When you judge a righteous judgment. Now people may ask, well, what do I know about this? How do you know he's changed his heart? I just said, I'm going to let his fruit show who he really is, what's in his heart. And people forget, you all know, I've been in prison. So I know what it's like to be judged by your past, not by your deeds. I volunteered for an organization, Kiwanis, to work with children. Spent the last 30 years doing volunteer work in one organization or another. But because of a 30-year-old conviction, they judged me on words, but not by my current actions, even within their organization. And I was asked to file an appeal. At first, I was not going to, and I think I may have brought this up before. But I filed that appeal. And of course, they ruled in my favor and said, you know what? These are the rules of men. This is what man does. But here's the sad part. We all don't want people to judge us by our deeds. But when they do something, somebody else does something, we are quick to judge them by what we have heard. Not what we have seen.
That's right.
And we ignore the transformative powers of Christ, which is the bottom line in any of it. Is there a transformation? Is it visible? Can you see it? Do you see the light of Christ in any of it? If you cannot, then I can say that there has been no transformation. Now, we all make mistakes. We all will continue to sin as long as we have breath and can get out and go and act. The key is when we recognize our sin, what are we going to do to fix it? And I say, I have some things I am going to fix today that I know was wrong, but I'm going to fix it. I'm going to let the transformative powers of Christ invade me in that area of my life, and I'm going to fix it. I want to read to you from Psalms. And I just said you are not special. It is, you are nothing special to evil men. I'm talking evil hearts. When you're doing what they want you to do. Did you hear what I said? You're spoken for. So you're nothing special because you're doing what they want you to do. That's when you become special, when you get in their path. But you are special to God always if you will heed his voice and obey his commands. 59:1. Deliver me from mine enemies. Deliver me, oh my God. Defend me from them that rise up against me. Because people will do things. Even though you may have fault in you, but you strive to do better, people will still do things because they want to see you fall. Defend me from them that rise up against me. 59:2. Deliver me from the workers of iniquity and save me from bloody men. Now here comes the good part. For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. They looking to catch you.
Yes.
To let the world know what you have done.
Yes.
That's how they operate. Oh, I know what you did. I know what you're doing. I'm going to expose you. Forget about all of the other good you may have done. That's irrelevant. I'm going to expose you. These are bloody men. And now when I say men, you know I'm speaking in generalities. That includes women.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Amen.
For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered against me, those from high, those from low.
Uh-huh.
Because there are words and there are power in words. They have gathered against me, check this out, not for my transgression, nor for my sin, O Lord. Then why are they gathered? Why are they gathered?
Well,
Because you're in their way. You're in their way of something that they want.
well,
And if it means destroying you
So be
to get it,
That's right.
or because they can't have it, they will destroy you.
Yes. That's right.
I have told you many times how the Republican Party don't cotton to me, even though I'm a member and I hold true to conservative values.
Yes.
But they don't want me because I won't carry their corrupt water.
Come on. Say it.
I don't say Democrats do X, Y, and Z and don't talk about what Republicans do.
Come on.
You see, they want me to blame everything on the Democrats.
Can't do
But
it.
there is nothing that the Democrats can do in D.C. without the help of various Republicans.
Amen to that.
Say that. Amen.
And I can never get them to understand that. Never.
well,
This is one reason why I keep my inner circle small.
Amen.
I got fewer enemies. There are very few people that I trust up on me. And when they violate what I put forth and say, this is how I operate, when they violate that, it's time to extricate myself
well,
from that situation
Amen.
because they become dangerous. The most dangerous person in the world is the ones that you let up into your business.
well, come on, come on.
When they see you do something,
well,
they stand ready
amen.
to destroy.
Yes,
The devil seeks to kill, steal,
And destroy.
and destroy.
amen.
Every day.
Let's move on to Isaiah. Learn to do well. This is chapter 1, verse 17. Oh, check this out. Now, here comes another good one. Seek judgment. Seek judgment. Why does Isaiah, why is he putting forth what God says about seeking judgment? Because judgment is how you can identify the ones that will destroy you. Judgment is how you can identify what actions of your own can destroy you. A single act can wipe out years of accomplishment.
That's right.
Do you remember Martin Luther King, a man who gave his life?
Well,
Yet the FBI tried to destroy him because they had some recordings of him having an affair.
come on. Have mercy, Lord.
Here, a man that gave up everything
Come on.
Amen.
for your good
Yeah.
was responsible for the destruction of Jim Crow, was responsible for wiping out the discrimination in wages for the sanitation workers,
Yeah.
for blacks having to sit at the back of the bus.
Well,
Come on.
It was for their good, but you know what? Satan knows.
Come on.
Because I saw the comments. I've seen the articles. Martin Luther King, Martin Lucifer King. Really?
Come on.
Martin Lucifer King? He had an affair. And this is the only deed by which you judge this man?
Come on.
But this is what we do.
amen.
We look for the chink so that we can destroy.
Well,
Seek judgment, relieve the oppressed. Is that not what he was engaged in? You pay the same amount of money to ride the bus, but you got to sit at the back. You pick up the same amount of garbage, but you get paid less.
well,
Check this out. Judge the fatherless. Now you want to know why he says judge the fatherless? Because if you have been transformed, truly transformed, you should have wisdom enough to know right from wrong.
come on, come on.
Who do our children learn from? They either learn from their parents
Come on.
or they learn from the streets.
Well,
When there are no parents, he said the fatherless, no father in the home. He didn't say the motherless.
That's right.
He said the fatherless. Because he knows that fathers are the key to a family.
Come on.
They are key
That's right.
to a family.
well,
To provide their judgment. Now, son, let me tell you. Now, if you're out there hanging with them, with them hoodlums, I don't know if y'all ever heard the album from Richard Pryor. And Richard, come here, boy. Where you going? You see the clock on the wall? What the clock say? And you know, he uses some colorful language. The clock, la la la, the clock. What the clock say? At 11, bring your blank here. I don't want you out there singing on the corner with them blanks.
well,
Because he knows that ain't nothing good happening out there on those streets on that corner.
That's right.
Judgment. And it says, judge the fatherless so that they know. That is the point. Plead for the widow.
Yes.
Single mothers are not to be ostracized.
Come
Well.
on. Come on.
amen.
Widows are not to be ignored
Well,
when they have children.
Amen.
They need our love.
Yes.
come on, have mercy, Lord.
They need our encouragement.
Yes.
They need our guidance.
Yes,
We are to be there as the fathers
yes,
so that their children, their sons and daughters, may grow up to walk into the transformative powers of Christ.
yes.
Come now and let us reason together. That's what we're doing.
Amen.
Amen.
We're trying to get an understanding.
Yes, yes.
Let us reason together, saith the Lord. Now, this is not my words. These are not Isaiah's words.
Come on.
He said,
Say it.
let us reason together, saith the Lord.
Yes.
Though your sins be as scarlet, visible,
Well,
Come on.
they shall be as white as snow. But how? Through the transformative powers of God.
amen. Come on, come on, come on.
Though they be red like crimson,
Yes.
they shall be as wool. Wool is hard to get through when you got on that armor.
Well,
You know, they use wool to insulate clothing. They use wool to help keep you warm from the cold.
Protection.
Who's ever had on a wool coat in the summertime? Ain't nothing getting in and ain't nothing getting out. If ye be willing and obedient, ye shall eat the good of the lamb,
Yes.
of the land.
Yes.
There's a condition. If ye be willing. So willing means, let me think. Am I going to do this or am I going to do that? Am I going to do this and allow the enemy to bring about my destruction? Or am I going to do that, stand up when I recognize the enemy, because God makes it easy to see the enemy.
Well,
It ain't that hard.
yeah. Well,
Am I going to do that and turn my sin as white as snow? Am I going to do that and insulate myself from the enemy? Which is it? That over there or this over here?
well,
Willingness to do either or. But if I decide to do this over here and stand on obedience brought about by judgment, because what is judgment? It is a decision.
well, come on.
It is a decision
Decision.
to go one way or the other.
Well,
But if we decide to be obedient, we have chosen to go the way of God. Have we not?
yes.
Amen.
And we can defend against the enemy, which takes us back to 59:1 from Psalms. Deliver me from mine enemies.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Defend me from them that rise up against me.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Oh, yes.
But it requires a transformative act within yourself
Yes.
that only you can do, just like when Chester stood up and said, I was filled with hate.
Come on.
But he was not struck down like Paul. Chester observed something.
Come on.
Amen.
He observed something
Yes.
and made a choice.
Made a choice.
He calls me his brother.
Come on.
When once upon a time, he may have called me something else.
Come on. That's right.
Well,
God transformed him.
Yes.
And if you think that the transformation is not that important, then you truly don't understand who God is, and you don't recognize transformed individuals when you see them.
Amen.
All you want is to kill, steal, and destroy by the will of Satan.
well,
Remember the sermon I preached, Seed Wars. There are those that do the will of Satan.
yes.
There are those that endeavor to do the will of God. But when we endeavor to do the will of God, and we allow ourselves, by opening ourselves up to sin and allowing others to see that sin, we open ourselves up to destruction.
Come on.
And it ain't God's fault.
Yes.
The fault rests with you.
Amen.
That's the truth. Amen.
So we need to be transformed. That's what the whole blood is about. Remember, Christ was the one and only sacrifice for all time. So the blood is an endless supply of that cleansing blood.
Amen.
Endless supply.
Well,
Under the Old Testament, they constantly had to go and kill the fatted calf.
yes.
That's right.
One that was unblemished. See, any old calf wouldn't do.
That's right.
Had to be unblemished.
That's right.
It had to be specific people involved.
That's right.
And certain things had to be done. But all you got to do now is just get on your knees.
Amen.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is get on your knees.
That's right.
And God will deliver you
But you will.
from your enemies.
Yes.
Amen.
And he will defend you against those that rise up against you. So when they say, well, I remember when you did thus and so, or I saw you yesterday do X, Y, and Z. I can say, yeah, but you know what? Before you brought it out, I set the record straight with you. So if you want to hold that against me, you keep on holding that against me. But I know the man upstairs has forgotten all about it.
Amen. Yeah.
That's how you deal with them.
Yeah.
Now, are there going to be some that's going to continue to hold it against you? Naturally.
Yes.
It's just of those, which is his name. Does that mean that there won't be people continuing to judge him from his past deeds? No, it does not. They will always be there.
Yeah.
Always reminding him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember what you did. I remember who you used to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to see nothing good in you because you didn't give me what I want. You got in my way.
Come on.
Now I'm going to be closing with two paragraphs I'm going to read about Abraham Lincoln for a reason. I said earlier that the children are our future.
Yes.
I talked about a sermon I preached called Seed Wars.
Well.
Satan endeavors to have our children, especially if they can't have you. Because when they have your children will grow up to do what Satan has asked him to do, according to those that have taught them. Because you did not. We had people wanting to tear down and wanting the statue of Abraham Lincoln removed. Black people who don't understand what Abraham Lincoln has done.
Yeah. Well.
Now those that are still in love with the Confederacy, that don't want to recognize what Abraham Lincoln did for this country, do so because in their minds, they hold near and dear the Confederacy, of which their vice president, Alexander Stephens, said, we're going to settle this question in our new Constitution once and for all, that the place of the Negro is to be that of a slave forever. They want to ignore that, but they want to remember one thing that Abraham started in the beginning of his public career, which was, I'm not trying to end slavery, I'm paraphrasing. But if you study history, you see the transformation that Abraham Lincoln came to. And in the end of it, his recognition that the ending of slavery was, get this, not on him, but God's will. These are his words. This was God's will. God's will. So here we go. Abraham Lincoln is often referred to as the great emancipator, and yet he did not publicly call for the emancipation throughout his entire life. We're talking about the early life of Abraham Lincoln.
Well.
Lincoln began his public career by claiming that he was anti-slavery. Okay, well, I'm a Christian and I'm against abortion. But I continue to elect politicians who supported, promoted, passed laws protecting it. That was Abraham Lincoln. He's anti-slavery, but he ain't willing to do nothing to stop it. Do you understand?
Yep.
You got me, right, Sister Vicky? Okay. He was anti-slavery, against anti-slavery's expansion, but not calling for the immediate emancipation. That's where he began.
Well.
That's where he started. Well, I'm not going to abort my children if we get pregnant or whatever. But it's a woman's right to kill the child that's in the womb. That same child that God told one of his prophets, I knew you before you were formed in the womb.
Amen. Well.
That means you had personage to God.
Amen.
You were a person.
Yes.
However, the man who began as anti-slavery eventually issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in those states that were in rebellion. We're talking about the South, the Confederacy.
Well.
He vigorously supported the 13th Amendment, which by law, because see, by law under the Constitution, slavery was legal. I often have to remind people when I talk about the evil of men. Now we went all the way back in Psalms, thousands of years ago, and God is talking about evil men, the mighty. He's talking about those in control. Evil men, the mighty. So if you think evil died back then and when Jesus came on the scene, something is wrong with you. Men are still evil, seeking to do you harm.
Well.
That will never end. Christ declares Satan is the ruler of this world. And he is subtle, operating in little sneaky ways to ensnare you, to expose you, to entrap you, to embarrass you, to bring about your downfall in the eyes of others. He eventually issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in those states that were in rebellion. He vigorously supported the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery throughout the United States. And in the last speech of his life, he recommended the extending the vote to African Americans. Now, does that sound like a man who started out, well, I'm just anti-slavery? He is recognizing that black people deserve the right to vote. He is quoted as saying, the word men mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, which says, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. He said the black man is included in the word men.
Well.
He did not start out that way because he was transformed. But people still call him the tyrant who caused hundreds of thousands of white lives in the Civil War. What about the millions of black lives that were lost in the slave trade?
Amen.
Don't they count?
Amen.
I don't see you complaining about that.
Amen.
But you don't want Abe Lincoln to get his due recognition, or you're too lazy to study history to show yourself approved. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. The second part of that, because they have rejected the truth of God. Well, what is the truth? Here is a politician who was transformed and finally had the courage and the will to act on it. He followed what is written in Psalms, even giving up his own life. Deliver me from mine enemies. O God, defend me from them that rise up against me. They killed him, but the Constitution was ratified. We got not only the 13th Amendment, but the 14th and the 15th. Why am I using this as an example? Because it is a real life example of what happens to Christians each and every day when people seek to destroy you. We don't start out as Christians willing to stand up for what is right. But if we allow God to transform us, we do something different. The nature of man when evil is allowed. Now, get this and I'll be done. This is A. Before proceeding, let me say I think I have no prejudice against Southern people. Now, he's talking about the slave owners. I'm not going to hold any prejudice against them. Do you remember when Christ was on the cross? What did he say? Forgive them, God, for they know not what they do. So he's speaking in generalities. They are just what we would be in their situation. In other words, if I didn't have a mind of God, I'd be doing the same thing if I were in their situation.
Amen.
No one can say, I love God and own slaves that you rape, lynch, abuse, because it is legal to do so. How can you say you love God?
Amen.
But they did. They were in church every Sunday.
Amen. Amen.
If slavery did not exist now amongst them, they would not introduce it. They wouldn't introduce it. It was there when the country was formed after the Revolutionary War. Slavery was already here in the 1400s. He's saying, I don't think they would seek to introduce it, but it's legal. Guess what? You know what? It's legal to kill your baby. It is. It's legal to kill your baby.
Yes.
Nobody ever introduced it. A woman went to court and said, I should have the right to kill my baby if I want to. And the judges said, okay, you got the right to kill your baby, and then abortion became a form of birth control. But it was not done through the Constitution. We're supposed to have the right to life, which means being born and living till your life is brought to a natural end.
Amen.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Well,
Those are rights given to us by God.
yes.
They call them unalienable rights, meaning no one should have the right to take it away.
Amen.
He goes on to say, if it did now exist among us, we should instantly give it up. This is a man who was transformed. Earlier in his career, I'm not trying to end slavery. I'm just anti-slavery. In fact, if I get my choice, I'm going to send the Negro back to Africa. Those were his words early on. But what is he saying here now? We should not instantly give it up. If it did now exist, I misquoted. If it now did exist amongst us, we should not give it up. What he is saying is because it is legal, no one is willing to give it up. Just like abortion. No one is willing to make abortion illegal because it's legal. Here is a man paralleling something that we see happening today with something that happened hundreds of years ago. This, I believe, of the masses of the North and South. He's saying that if it were legal up here in the South, they'd probably be doing the same thing. He is acknowledging the evil that exists naturally in man. When you make something that is illegal, legal, and you make something that is abhorrent and anti-God legal, no one wants to give it up because they will say, well, it's legal. It's legal. And Paul said, obey the laws of government. Paul ain't never said obey crooked government. Paul was talking about righteous people in government. I preached a sermon on that. Nowhere can you find a scripture of God condoning evil men, evil deeds. Nowhere in this Bible can you find that. It does not exist. And others who would gladly introduce slavery anew. Yep, there are some that will introduce it.
Keep it alive, yeah.
If it were out of existence, they would introduce it. Because there are evil men amongst us. We know that some of the southern men do free their slaves, go north, and become tip-top abolitionists.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why do some men give up their slaves, go north, and become tip-top abolitionists? Transformation. Thank you, Sister Vicky. Transformation. I guarantee you, if everybody in here went to an abortion procedure and you saw the parts coming out in pieces, little baby hands, fingers, elbows, feet, toes, head. If you witnessed one, I watched them, but I didn't need the video to turn me against abortion, because I understand God's word. I didn't need that. But some of us need that just so we can get understanding, proper understanding. Seeing a small baby torn in pieces because somebody decided that that life was not worthy. Go north and become tip-top abolitionists, while some northern ones go south and become the most cruel slave masters there were.
Well,
Because it's legal. Because it's legal. There was no transformation. The last quote I'm going to read from Mr. Abraham Lincoln is, if slavery is not wrong, I'm going to sub slavery. If abortion is not wrong, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. It's all good. Have at it. It's legal. A man in government makes it possible. A man in government says it's okay. A man in government says it's okay to go into our schools or our libraries and allow drag queens to sit before our children and teach them things that are an abomination to Lord God himself. It's okay because it's legal. I talk about these things because our most valuable resource is now on the line. And it is our children.
amen.
I see people protesting about George Floyd. Now, I have made no qualms, and many were upset with me because I said his criminal past is irrelevant. He was entitled to all of the protections of the Bill of Rights. Period.
Amen.
However, where are the protests over the 8-year-old girl who was killed 4th of July weekend?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see one. Or the other 5 children that were killed in Chicago. Or the 90 people that were shot in Chicago. Or the 13 that died in Chicago. These things do not upset us. Well, it upsets a few like us, but not the masses. Because we only care if we are told to care. We are being told that our cops are all racist. The pastor is in law enforcement. Do you think she would stand knowing that someone that she was working with was a racist and not do something about it? The majority of the Atlanta police officers, most of them are black. Do you think an upstanding black Leo would know that a white cop was racist and deliberately mistreating people and not report it. Our problem is not a race problem. Our problem is a God problem and an understanding of his word for Christians, and it's a bad politician problem because they are in a position to do something about it, but only if we force them. And we are losing our children every day.
Amen.
Every single day, our children are being struck down. We need to be reaching out to the fatherless and trying to be an example. But we got to live that example. And the only way to effectively live that example is to be transformed. And in your transformation, you will get two things. God will deliver you from your enemies until your work is done. Because sometimes when you get in the way of the enemy, God allows you to go on because your work has been done. I.e. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X. When Malcolm X got in the way of the Nation of Islam, they took him out because he was exposing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for his corruption. So sometimes God allows you to come home, just like he did Jesus, who had to die, just like he did Paul, just like he did Peter. But their work had been done, and it was significant work in the name of God. So there is deliverance. God will also protect you from your enemies. But you must be transformed. You must learn to be obedient no matter the cost. God bless you all. Allow the transformative powers of God to permeate your life. Put on that wool. Turn that red to white as snow. And walk in God and ignore what people may say. Learn to extricate yourself from relationships that you know are not what they are supposed to be. That's that added protection that God will give you. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Amen. The doors of the church are open.